we'll develop the topic Interactive Books in Adult Learning, based on the interactive book Plain Geometry, What You Need to Know. It's available on the Descartes Digital Educational Network platform.
Geometría plana, lo que debes saber. In English, Plain Geometry, What You Need to Know. Good morning, esteemed colleagues and participants of the 2025 Forum for Excellence. My name is Jose M. Fernandez. My nickname is Gema, and it is an honor to be here to share with you my work on Plain Geometry, What You Need to Know, within the theme of interactive books in adult learning. Before I begin, I would like to explain why I have chosen to present my work through this video format. As an educator with extensive experience, I have learned that honesty and authenticity are fundamental pillars in any teaching learning process. For 65 of my 77 years of life, Spanish has been my primary language of communication. This reality has shaped not only my way of thinking, but also how my speech apparatus has developed and specialized. While I have a strong conceptual command of English and can communicate effectively in writing, I recognize that my pronunciation does not achieve the fluency I consider appropriate for a presentation of this importance. For this reason, I have decided to create this video presentation where I can combine the visual precision of geometric concepts with carefully prepared narration. This way, I can ensure that the mathematical and pedagogical content reaches you with the clarity and accuracy that this forum of excellence deserves. This decision also reflects one of the central principles of my educational approach: adapting to circumstances to maximize learning, using the tools and formats that best serve our pedagogical objectives. Next, I will present how Plain Geometry, What You Need to Know, incorporates interactive elements to transform the learning experience for adult students, converting abstract concepts into practical and accessible tools. Over the next few minutes, you'll see the presentation, created with the help of Gemini Pro 2.5, Notebook LM, Claude Sonnet 4, HeyGen, VLC Media Player, and most importantly, my guidance. Without us humans, AIs are just machines, waiting for instructions.
The history of geometry is the history of us humans. The book, Geometría Plana, Lo que debes saber, highlights the importance of understanding the history of cognitive processes. A study of the book reveals how the technological advances we already take for granted are actually the culmination of centuries of work. The reader follows the trail of one of the most powerful tools the human mind has ever created: geometry. It forces us to remember that our technologically advanced present didn't appear out of nowhere. It is built on profound foundations of ancient knowledge. Every new app, every new invention is just the latest link in a very long chain of discoveries that stretches back millennia. The GPS in your car, the architecture of our cities, the very screen you're viewing this on. What do they have in common? Well, they all share a common origin. Their plan, their design, comes from a very ancient discipline, geometry. And here arises the question the book attempts to answer: when, where, and how did it all begin? The book begins with two giants of antiquity, Egypt and Babylon, where geometry wasn't an academic dissertation, it was a survival tool. The Egyptians were concerned with how to solve the problem immediately. The best example was measuring the land after the famous Nile floods. The reader can appreciate the mathematical mind of the Egyptians through the Rhine's papyrus. The book presents a simulation showing how they calculated the area of a circle, applying a process based on experience. It wasn't exact by our standards today, but it was incredibly ingenious and precise enough to build their civilization. And while this was happening in Egypt, in Mesopotamia, the Babylonians were taking calculations to a completely different level. Their number system, the base 60 sexagesimal system, allowed them an astonishing precision for their time. The reader finds that they were already exploring Pythagorean triplets, more than 1,000 years before Pythagoras himself was born. However, for the ancient Greeks, it wasn't enough to simply know that something worked. They became obsessed with a much deeper question that changed everything. Why does it work? This simple question transformed geometry into a formal system of pure logic. They created the axiomatic system.
Start with a handful of truths so self-evident they need no proof, the axioms. And from those foundations, use pure logic, brick by brick, to build an entire edifice of demonstrable knowledge. The theorems. And this idea, this, is the foundation of all modern mathematics. And this is the key point the book tries to impress upon the reader. A.
In other parts of the world, other great civilizations generated their own geometry. We see this in China, with the 9 chapters on the mathematical art, a guide for surveyors. We see this in India, with the Sulba Sutras, which detailed how to build religious altars with millimeter precision. And of course, in the Americas, where the Mayans used geometry to align their temples with the stars, and the Incas designed those impressive terraces that still dominate the Andes today. Each culture is a testament to that human instinct to measure, to organize, and to build. With the fall of the Roman Empire, much of Greek knowledge was lost in Europe. But the Islamic world, during its golden age, became the custodian of that knowledge. Scholars in places like the famous House of Wisdom in Baghdad did not limit themselves to being mere translators of Euclid. They studied it, critiqued it, expanded it, and very importantly, fused it with knowledge coming from India and Persia. It is important for the reader to know that from this crucible emerged geniuses such as the Persian Al-Jawharizmi, to whom we owe algebra. Centuries later, through centers like the School of Translators of Toledo in Spain, this entire treasure of knowledge returned to Europe and was the spark that ignited the fire of the Renaissance. And so, after this long journey, we arrive at the present. Each stage was absolutely essential. If we eliminate even one of them, the things that now seem so normal to us simply wouldn't exist as we know them. Ancient civilizations created a set of tools and knowledge, and with that, they built their world. Pyramids, temples, amazing cities. We have inherited the result of all that progress and accumulated an exponentially more powerful knowledge. The big question that remains in the reader's mind is, what wonders, what future are we going to build with this incredible heritage? Geometry arises from and is nourished by the real world. We have seen how the book begins with the origins of geometry. Now let's see how the book provides a new perspective on learning, transforming the teaching of geometry from mere memorization to an exploration of dynamic truths. It is about turning the abstract into something that can literally be seen and touched. The goal is very clear. We need to go beyond the traditional textbook. The idea is for the reader to see geometry in a dynamic and understandable way for everyone. Using interactive tools, this theory comes to life. This is the key to my pedagogical strategy, understanding without memorizing. The approach is to make knowledge accessible and practical, placing great emphasis on visual learning and, most importantly, stimulating geometric reasoning with meaningful practice. Therefore, to build that reasoning, the book starts with the beginning of everything, the story. Let's look at the interactive created from problem 50 of the Rind Papyrus. This text from ancient Egypt explains how to calculate the area of a circular field. Subtract 1/9 of the diameter from the diameter itself, which is 1. The difference is 8. Now multiply 8 by 8, which gives 64. This is the area. It's not exact, but it's very practical, and that's precisely what makes it great. The book uses interactive digital tools to transform abstract ideas, which are sometimes so difficult to grasp, into visual, intuitive experiences that can almost be touched. For example, let's think about the concept of dimensions. I use everyday analogies. A train on its track is 1 dimension. A car on a flat surface is 2 dimensions. And an airplane in the sky is 3. An idea that could be very abstract becomes intuitive. The same logic is used for the most basic elements to master the fundamentals, the types of lines and how they relate to each other. Parallel, secant, perpendicular. They are tools to visualize how these small pieces come together to shape the world around us. Once the concepts are clear, the next logical step is to apply them, and this is where the approach shifts toward reinforcing knowledge using interactive tools designed for practice. Concepts such as perimeter and area are absolutely essential. The interactives focusing on regular polygons allow students to apply these formulas directly and thus move from abstract theory to solving real practical problems. Now we move on to a fundamental tool, the Cartesian plane. The most important thing here is that there is a specific interactive feature that allows practicing how to locate points using coordinates, and this lays the foundation for what will be analytical geometry. This example demonstrates how to go from the abstract to the practical. The Cartesian plane suddenly turns into a map of the real world, the Chicago loop. There, the letters and numbers help locate specific places, like Polk Station at coordinate H2. But of course, this leads us to the next logical question. Once we locate 2 points on the map, how do we measure the distance between them? The answer, of course, lies in the distance formula, which is derived from none other than the Pythagorean theorem. And yes, as you might imagine, there is another interactive activity to practice this formula, connecting a superclassic theorem with a completely direct and useful application. And the final challenge ties everything together, connecting geometry directly with solving real-world problems. All these elements together create a super cohesive learning system that functions as a very solid bridge between theory and the application of mathematics in real life. Practical application. First, the historical context is provided. Second, it is visualized with interactive tools. And third, it is reinforced through practical application. It's a full circle from theory to practice, with the ultimate goal of not memorizing rules, but developing critical thinking and analytical skills that will last forever. And all of this leaves us with a very important question to reflect on, especially for those who are dedicated to teaching. In what other ways can these interactive tools transform the future of mathematics education? It's something worth considering. Are we in agreement? What if the best way to take a break from studying was actually to study? It sounds a little strange, but it's a strategy used in the book Geometria Plana, Lo que debes saber. It turns games into a powerful learning tool. Using simple games, key learning moments are created. It is a way to reinforce concepts almost without realizing it. What does this look like in practice? Imagine you've just finished a dense section full of angle terms, and suddenly the book says, "A break doesn't hurt." And right there, a word search appears. It's an invitation to slow down, to leave formal theory aside for a while and start playing. And what seems like a simple game is actually a well-thought-out pedagogical design. Step 1. The context. You've just seen a bunch of new angle words. Step 2. The cue. The book itself tells you, let's play. Step 3. The task. Finding exactly those terms in the word search. Step 4. The result. The vocabulary is fixed without having to memorize it. And the frog game? Notice how it's introduced. Hello, this is the frog game. It's that informal tone, like when a friend invites you to play. The interesting thing about this game is that it rewards progress for correct answers, but setbacks for incorrect answers. Once again, it's the signal that we're moving from a serious exercise to something much more relaxed. If we put these pieces together, we see the materialization of a concept called an integrative pedagogical approach, a method that deliberately combines free time with meaningful and purposeful practices. The goal is to make learning not only more effective, but also more enjoyable. The benefits are obvious. First, breaks cease to be dead time and become real practice. Second, the pressure of traditional exercises is reduced. This allows knowledge to be consolidated because it must be actively recalled to play. It connects play directly with academic success. This method breaks with the idea that studying and resting are separate things. And this leaves us with a very interesting question. If play can have a purpose, what does that mean for the future of learning? Perhaps the best way to connect someone with knowledge isn't by forcing more study time, but by designing better breaks. A thought-provoking idea, isn't it? When we talk about visualization in mathematics, the first thing that comes to mind is geometry. For many, geometry is that abstract, slightly intimidating subject. But what if we could transform it, make it visually unforgettable? The biggest challenge in teaching geometry is that it often feels like a list of formulas to memorize, disconnected from the real world. It's like having two worlds. On one side, traditional teaching, and on the other, a visual and practical approach that changes everything. This book introduces a visual and practical approach where images aren't just decoration but essential teaching tools. Every image was designed with intent to connect the abstract concept to the real world. Geometry is in everyday life. The images visualize it. Why show a solitary hexagon on a blank page? Let's see them in everyday life instead. Polygons and circles are everywhere, in nature, in architecture, on signs. Geometric figures are everywhere. Our gaze, wherever we look, stumbles upon geometry. The book aims to help the reader verify this. It is preferable for students to verify what they know through tests, rather than being evaluated on what they know. There's a proposal in Plain Geometry, What You Need to Know, that completely rethinks how we teach geometry, giving the traditional approach a total overhaul. I've always asked myself, how can I tear down the wall of anxiety caused by tests? We've all seen it, right? That pressure to get a good grade that often blocks students and pulls them away from real learning. In my experience as both a teacher and a student, I discovered that the problem isn't the difficulty of mathematics. It's how we present the exercises. My proposal is simple but radical. Change the purpose of exercises. They should stop being tools for measurement and become tools for building knowledge. The foundation of this methodology is a profound mindset shift. It's about moving away from an evaluation system that punishes mistakes to one that uses them as raw material for learning. Let's think about the traditional model: pressure for grades, fear of making mistakes. Now let's contrast that with the approach in this book. Exercises designed not as tests, but as opportunities for reflection, so students can reinforce what they know and identify what they still need to work on. There's a phrase that sums up this philosophy: approach problems with curiosity, not fear. In this approach, mistakes stop being failures and become clues, opportunities to dig deeper into the why behind the concepts. The method follows a three-step cycle. First, the book presents a solved example, breaking down the reasoning step by step. Then, it invites the student to apply that reasoning to a similar exercise. And most importantly, feedback is immediate. Students don't have to wait for someone to correct them. They can check their answers right away. This cycle isn't something that appears occasionally. It's the backbone of the book. It's applied to all key topics: polygons, triangles, quadrilaterals, circles. The system is designed to reduce frustration and foster student autonomy. And I also included small historical details to spark curiosity. Did you know that James A. Garfield, before becoming President of the United States, developed his own proof of the Pythagorean theorem? These kinds of anecdotes humanize mathematics and show that great ideas can come from the most unexpected places. We recreated Garfield's demonstration for better understanding by the reader. I also include a notable story about Indiana and squaring the circle. In 1897, amateur mathematician Edward J. Goodwin convinced the state of Indiana that he had solved the problem. But there was a problem. To perform his proof, Goodwin took the value of pi as 3.2 instead of its approximate value of 314. But Purdue University mathematician Clarence A. Waldo, horrified, went to the Indiana Senate demanding the repeal of the proposal. The so-called House Bill 246, popularly known as the Indiana Pi Act, was never passed. Finally, I wanted students to be able to integrate everything they've learned to solve more complex problems without feeling overwhelmed. The methodology I propose is clear. Break down a large problem into smaller, more manageable parts. For example, in the book I propose calculating the area of an aviary in Chicago's Lincoln Park. We divide the shape into a square here, a semicircle there. Then, we calculate each part separately and add the results together. This approach not only reinforces calculation skills, but also connects learning to a real project, something tangible that gives it purpose and meaning. In summary, this methodology invites us to reflect on the purpose of practice in mathematics. What if every exercise were designed not to measure, but to build knowledge? I firmly believe the result would be more meaningful learning that lasts far beyond tests and exams. The book emerges as a special project of the ABE-AS Master Teacher, 2025, as the references prove. The book also contains a reference chapter which addresses the connection of plane geometry, what you need to know, with the National Reporting System, or NRS. The book does not rigidly follow the 6 NRS levels, but is designed to be a flexible and valuable resource for students and teachers at any NRS level. Its goal is to create an enriched learning environment where concepts are better understood and retained. For example, for a student in NRS Level 1, grades 0 to 1, the chapters on length, perimeter, area, and basic shapes are directly applicable. They connect to fundamental standards in measurement, geometry, and even basic counting. Moving on to Level 2, grades 2-3, the same chapters on area and perimeter now align with more complex operations like adding and multiplying larger numbers. Additionally, there's a focus on classifying shapes like quadrilaterals and triangles, perfectly covering the geometric standards for this level. And for Level 3, grades 4 to 5, the book goes even deeper. Area calculations are no longer just addition, but involve the 4 operations, simple algebraic expressions, and solving equations when a measurement is missing. Topics such as classifying shapes by their shared attributes, a key concept at this level, are covered. This detailed alignment has been carefully designed. The book is relevant and useful because its content reinforces the learning standards at each stage. But that's not all. This section also includes a geometric technical glossary. It's not just a simple list of words, it's a very well thought out learning tool. What makes it so special? First, it is exhaustive. It goes from the most basic like point or line to advanced concepts like barycenter, orthocenter, and the famous Pythagorean theorem. Second, it is contextual. It doesn't just define geometric terms. It includes historical and cultural references like papyrus, scribe, or mandala, connecting geometry with its origins. Third, it is modern and transparent. It even defines the technical terms behind the creation of the book, like HTML, JavaScript, and KTeX. This shows that it has been developed with interactive technology. And finally, it is integrative. It defines algebraic concepts, units of measurement like degree and radian, and other mathematical terms that help students connect geometry with other areas. The references section and glossary of the book should not be seen as a mere appendix. They are part of the framework that supports this pedagogical philosophy. They demonstrate a real commitment to teaching, offering a tool that is at once rigorous, flexible, and deeply enriching for anyone who wants to learn geometry. So when you open a textbook, look at these sections. They could reveal a lot about the quality and care with which it was created.
Thank you very much for your patience. I hope your expectations have been met. I have applied this same philosophy to the creation of the website GED para Hispanos, which GED students can freely access. Here's a brief overview. Extensive information on the GED, with study schedule based on the website's content, the website's associated blog, a AI tutor specializing in GED, and all study subjects including games and exams. The science course is divided into 4 study blocks, with interactive exercises. For example, in life sciences, the topic of genetics is very important, especially understanding the Punnett square, which is why an interactive Punnett square has been included. Social studies have been worked on based on timelines, presenting text, images, videos, and questions for each topic covered. Language arts has been carefully crafted. Using AI, I've created specialized chatbots. For example, in the topic The Author's Purpose and the Elements of Persuasion, you type The Golden Age. And the chatbot creates a text with that title. As well as 10 questions about the author's purpose and persuasion. In math, I've worked in depth on visualizing concepts. The discriminant is an essential part of understanding quadratic functions. Being able to manipulate values to understand how a linear equation behaves is fundamental to understanding them. The GED test places great emphasis on comparing functions in different representations. An interactive approach is essential for understanding this. Math challenges with emojis add a touch of fun to the order of operations. Students copy them to share on social media. All tests provided on the website follow the guidelines established by GED testing services regarding content, complexity, and time, as well as my concept of testing rather than examining. As with the real test, students are given access to the formula sheet and calculator. All questions include immediate feedback, ensuring that students can correct their mistakes and learn, which is ultimately the goal of our work as teachers. Thank you very much again. That's all for now.